welcome to the Authentic Hour. My name is Alex, and I've got a pleasure to be your host today. Special guest joining us today. We met by accident by AI agent. Welcome, technology.
I love this story.
And by the way, that's the most amazing way of using AI and the new technology. That's the correct way, guys. So definitely follow the example. And we started talking, and I thought it would be marvelous if Jennifer can join us for our authentic hour and tell us a bit more about herself and her journey towards self-discovery, because it's a highly inspiring and just beautiful story.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me and asking me to join you for Authenticity Hour. I was just telling you, I love the name of this, and it's interesting right now. You would not know from my background, but I'm actually in Bali, where the word authenticity is used quite frequently. So as we move through our time together, we can talk a little bit about how we kind of think about authenticity. For me, as you know, like I started my my journey of self-discovery was a gift from my mom, actually. So when I was like 6 months old, I was getting ready to have my first my christening. So I was in my christening dress, and my parents were having an argument right before my christening, and it was deeply upsetting my mom. And so she took me with my christening dress to go sit under this big tree outside of the mission where the christening was going to happen. And she started practicing her meditation practice, which was transcendental meditation. So my first self-discovery kind of really was around that shared experience with her. And she was very much a coach and a guide for me, providing me with a lot of information over the years. And you could probably guess by the story I just told that my parents divorced. So when many years later, not that many, when I was about 6, and they were two incredibly different people. So she was this this person who was very much seeking a sense of herself and a sense of knowledge and a sense of truth. And my father was very much seeking a sense of identity through material possessions and a more, Western standard definition of success. And so as I was growing up, I would kind of like a pendulum swinging back and forth. I don't meditation. I don't want to do anything that's spiritually developing, exploring. I'm going to go do something that's, picking out stainless steel kitchen appliances. I would watch myself go back and forth through that. And I think that's where at least I see a lot of people who do the same thing. We don't necessarily, this path isn't just this one thing. We're human beings in this human form trying to navigate and explore what this is. So as you know, one of my companies is called the U Lab, and our tagline is explore being human. And that's, I think it for me is really looking back on the life that I've led so far and being able to say, oh, okay, when people ask me what my purpose is, for example, I don't say, and I've had this argument that people actually are, oh, Jen, you help all these people all over the world, and that's what you do. And you're so lucky you have your purpose. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? You've known me for 20 years. Do you not know that's not my purpose? like, let me be really, this is an authentic moment right now, right? This is what I'm about to say. My purpose for me is to explore this experience of being human, to learn as much as I can through my own experience, through education, through listening and learning from others and other teachers, but to really understand as much as I can during this lifetime about what this is to be a human being. Because I think for me, that's, at least for me, that's my reason for coming into this birth, right? So if along the way my exploration helps other people or supports them or helps guide them or does something that is beneficial, or maybe it's a cautionary tale, who knows? That could be beneficial too. Then that's fantastic, but I think that's really the part of my self-development where that I'm really clear on, and it really loosens a lot of stuff up for me, you know.
I was just pondering on exactly same topic for last week. So I was uh, being an entrepreneur and startup founder. There is a part of entrepreneurs and startup founders that chase the gold star. Like, if I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna reach this particular metric, I'm gonna be good enough. So my purpose is to combine technology and meditation, and I'm gonna do it when I'm gonna achieve a particular annual recurring revenue, and I'm gonna get accepted to particular programs. Like,
Right.
wow. And wow, like, it's a part of a human journey to understand that your purpose is to be human, to experience it. That's it. There is nothing else. And through and realize that you are worthy the way you are,
Mm.
exactly who you are. And that's you, who you don't need to prove anything to anyone to deserve love and acceptance. And
No, and it's the same thing, really, I think, too, Alex, is there's nothing wrong with being a startup founder who's chasing the metrics, who's wanting to do that. It's the only thing, and I think it's no different from anything that we do during our day, is understanding the autonomy and the choices that we have available. And not everybody has the same amount of autonomy and choices. That can be based on a lot of things, right? Socioeconomic, education, gender, ethnicity, governments we live under, right? Location. I mean, there's so many things that really can influence that. But at the end of the day, we do have that sense of that internal climate. And if we decide that we want to, match meditation and technology and find that metric and be able to support and help you that way, I think that's beautiful. I think that the thing that I work with people on is to touch in with the relationship on why that's meaningful for them.
yeah,
You know
and
what I
and
mean?
that yeah, and that's it. I think that that's the tricky part, because many of us still, we are in such a search of purpose, and we need
Yeah.
this purpose to be clearly defined,
Yeah.
that if we think as ourselves as an onion, yes, this is not the first layer, but it's still, we're still perceiving the purpose from the lenses of ethic of material world.
I look at it like this. It's this idea of, and I think that, so my PhD looks a lot at like identity, right? And like the neurophysiological effects of identity and trauma, right? And how we experience that. And I think of this kind of thing, and again, not if this not just me, but it's not, these aren't all my concepts either, is we have an identity that we are in large part defining through external relationships, right? Even the idea of gender and what that means and the expression of that, right? All of these different things are very externally defined. And, there's this, in the theory of mind, there's an idea around inactive consciousness, right? So embodied consciousness, which is consciousness that is actually being experienced in and because and through the body. And then inactive consciousness is taking that to a, it's very similar, but it's a little bit different in the sense that it's saying it's our consciousness is formed in relationship.
Mm.
And so when we come to the mind to try to give us this sense of identity, we're using those external factors to really help define us, right? Which is understandable. Our brains are looking for the shortest circuit to be able to make meaning, to make sense, right? So as we live in these environments and institutions and communities and constructs, we're borrowing others' pre-existing ideas in large part to help us make that meaning and understand ourselves, so to speak. And so then we flip the script and go, okay, wait a second. What if I'm not that external? Right? Which is, I think, where a lot of meditation starts coming in, and contemplative practices at large are asking us to for a moment, suspend these ideas around this external, sort of brain, mind focused identification and look to something else, which is the observer, for example, right? Who's having the thoughts is a one. So I think this is a really good place for us to think about, like, when we get down to that, it's like, right, who are we? Who's doing the wanting? you
Yeah.
know? And in just asking the questions, it starts loosening up some of the single, and this happens a lot with founders, right? You become very myopic, and in some ways you need to be. All the energy, all the resources, all the creativity is going into seeing this thing be birthed, be funded, be scaled. And so as we're moving through those stages, I think that that's where there's different stages of our own personal internal development that are super helpful for people who are going through that as well, right? And this could be with new jobs, new families, new moves. Anytime that there's something that you're like, okay, I'm starting a new chapter and I'm really focusing on something. So for some people, it's their personal health, So I mean, the idea, I think, applies a lot around how do we check in so that we keep a balance and a centeredness about us,
And
even as we're exploring those things, right? But if something doesn't go wrong, if the funding doesn't come through, if the accelerator program we weren't accepted to, they pass on us, whatever, how do we still maintain that sense of, equanimity, right? Yeah.
and I like to think about this exact choice on the smallest possible level, because I
Mm,
like to think about it that it's included in information theory that consciousness is develops as we are gathering information, and the purpose is
mhm,
to lower is to lower the friction within the
mhm,
system, and we are lowering the friction within the system once we are becoming more in tune with ourselves, and the
mm,
choices that we are making are coming from the place of love. So
mm,
yes, every single milestone is a great opportunity to reflect on where is it coming from. Is it coming from fear, or is it coming from love? What is my intention and where my actions are coming from? But then the optimal scenario, the perfect situation, is when actually we can use these guidelines for every single decision that we are making in our lives. If it's, am I doing it because I'm fearful and I'm trying to numb some of my emotions, or am I aware of what I'm feeling and I'm able to make the decisions in alignment with my greater good?
right.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll step it back to a story that I might have already told you in one of our other conversations, but I'll share it here because I think it's a really profound way of thinking about identity and kind of this idea of how we're checking in, and we're not static, right? So we're constantly changing. Um, but there are some, there's big T truth, little T truth, right? So universal truths and then like truths of the day. um, so I was working with some Maori elders, and one of them was the chief in New Zealand. This was some years back, and we were going through these identity exercises as a way to do some work with an organization. And this guy was really pushing back on me. He was like, Jen, I don't care what you say about dynamic, identity, and things never are the same, and it's the only constants change, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I am Maori, and that's the end of the story, and nothing changes that.
Mm.
And, I've really felt where he was coming from. You know what I mean? Like this is what happens. We have things that we identify with that are not to be questioned, right? That's our choice of how we want to show up in the world. What I said to him was, 100% agree with you. My question is this: when you were a boy, what was your relationship to being Maori versus what your relationship and understanding of it is now?
Mm.
So in this case, the factor may not change, but our relationship, like you were just saying, Alex, which I think is the key point here, is we're getting more information, we're learning, we're exploring, we're learning more. And as we're doing that, our relationships to these ideas of who we are and what we do and what our purpose is changes, you know.
And that's
And
the
I think
beauty of
having
being
the
human.
yeah, exactly. And it's a I think it sometimes time and age can be helpful in this situation, where you're like, oh, okay, now that I look back on this, I see I've actually had 4 or 5 lives. Some younger people in their 30s or 40s, they may also have already felt like they've had that happen too, right? But there are rhythms to this that many cultures are very, very well versed in, in terms of stages of development and life and what that means. And this idea of rushing to accomplish or rushing to define or rushing to, God forbid, what we would call in the West is look at as, a general idea of success. It's these kinds of things that I think it's where things like True Me, ULab, having places where you can go and get some support, find some community, so that as you're unpacking your journey and your experience of being human, that you have some ways of having some people, it's like we hold hands through the ages, and we hold hands in our community, and hopefully we're holding hands in our families, and it's reaching out to be able to use that collective wisdom sometimes to help. Inevitably, what is a very individual, isolated, unique journey,
Would you say that the culture on the West, and I'm thinking Europe towards US,
Mm-hmm.
is more individualistic and less rooted in the community when the culture on the East? So it's almost like on the West we really forgotten the importance of the community.
Yeah, I can't say that exactly. And the reason why is that would be, I think, really disrespectful to a lot of
Mm.
cultures that do have. I think that we could look at the last 50 years in the West and say there's been a huge push to be even more individualistic, no matter what particular country, culture you come from. There has been a push in that direction of even more individualism, right? Um, that being said, there are a lot of countries in Europe that still have a really strong, sort of sense of collective, It's more of a collectivist society than an individualistic, even though I think those metrics are probably, again, have moved,
Mm.
significantly. I think there's also obviously there's a generational issue to be thinking about as well. And then that bleeds into things like policy and, all these different ideas. But but overall, to step it back a little further, I would definitely say, I mean, myself, historians, at least from what I've read, I would say that, in a lot of places, in the global south, in Africa, in far Asia, near Asia, you would see more collectivist communities. Yeah. And to be clear on this, that is not to say that it's better. Because I think that what we've seen is, and we've seen this in several situations where there's not a balance, right? So I think that there's a balance of this understanding self and understanding self in relationship, right?
I think the balance, that's the
Hmm.
key to it, because I'm far
Yeah,
from saying something is worse, something is better. That's
right.
definitely not the case.
No.
But I believe that there is power and benefit in growing through a community and
Hmm.
exchanging experiencing, then especially in the time when there's so many information available and the
Hmm.
pace of life increased so significantly over last decade or so. um,
Hmm.
it's almost easier to get lost in this chaos of information. And
Yeah.
here, the benefit of community and growing together comes as a beautiful foundation of not being lost in the sea of information on Instagram and TikTok and all over the place. So I think this is what I was getting through it with, the beauty
Yeah.
of community, growth through the community, which I feel like we are coming back to more and more.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think like we're talking about these larger sort of parameters around the way we define and understand nation states and different cultures, right? And so when we think about individualistic versus collectivist cultures, again, knowing that a lot of times these have a tendency to be on the outer edges, right? Not balanced. And so both now, I think, in cultures, in many different ways, there's a yearning at the very least. And we see that yearning manifesting in a lot of different ways, right? Some of it is dangerous or violent and negative in terms of respect or human rights. There's a lot of things that happen in this, but it is a response to not being in balance and trying to figure out how to get in balance. So yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think it's funny because I have friends who are like, the end all be all kind of thing is to be in relationship, um, and that doesn't necessarily mean romantic, but just in relationship in order to grow. And I'm kind of the middle way, I'm like, well, there's a lot of value to also individual, silent, solitary exploration. But both are important, and I think they both have, there's different times and places where they can be beneficial. What, for me, I think what you're creating and what I do in my work is to create space where when people are looking for that growth through community, there's some place they can go that they feel valued, understood, trusted, um, authenticity, a sense of honesty, that there's some of these core values to help, like you're saying, cut all the noise that we're getting that doesn't necessarily have our best interest at heart, but knows how to play the emotional algorithm to get us to push and punch and, sign up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I think that's what's so great, at least from what you've shared, that I love, is this idea of using technology to help create an environment of understanding that helps us lead us to one another for support, and creating that sense of community. So I think there's a lot of value to that. And I think I mean, to me, when I think about, I'll go back to the Bali and, uh, if anyone spent a lot of time in Ubud, they would understand this. And no offense to all my Ubudian friends, but this is one of the vortexes, right, of Sedona, Arizona, and there's different places around the world that you'll have this gathering of people, and we start using these words. It's kind of like we use the word love, right? It's like we start using these words, assuming that everybody has the same definition, or I should say connotation, right? And so I know a lot of people who their version of authenticity, I'm like, wow, that's like a used car salesman. That doesn't feel very authentic to me at all. I mean, it's cool that you want to sell me something, but let's be honest about that and about what benefit that may have. But let's not pretend that there's like some elevated spiritual enlightenment, and that's the reason that I should be doing this. So that's where that ego mind is getting in the way. So it's something around, again, I think it's the use of words. That's why I love this idea of the authentic hour. I think it'd be great. I, I think it's just a good question to ask anybody. Like, what does that even mean to you? You know?
And it's a perfect segue. It's the most amazing segue because the next question is what is authenticity?
Yes. Mm, I think I'm
Like,
freezing up. Yes. What is authenticity to me? I would love to tell you that I prepped for this. But
that's very good.
because I mean, on some level, I'm guessing this question's coming, but the honest truth is, I did not. And that wasn't because I wanted it to be spontaneous. It's because I was too lazy to prep. Okay, but this is this is my first, first answer, best answer, whatever. Um, to me, authenticity is about being able to be as fully present as you can be. And authenticity does not even require anybody else.
Mm.
It is a way of being, and it requires an ability to be, again, I think the way I would gauge how authentic someone is would be to say, how fully present can they be in this moment and in this moment and, continuously,
Yeah.
with the ability to shift, with the ability to take in information, with the ability to respond from a place of, balance and groundedness, um, with not having the mind want to react, but to be able to reply through a response. So I think it would be very much authenticity to me has a lot to do with people's capacity to be present. That's my
Beautiful.
that's my answer.
Beautiful.
It's
Fully
such
agree
a
with you.
good question. Now I'm going to go away and think about this after our time together, but I think I'll be happy. If I'm not happy with my answer, I'll email you. I'll let you know if I've changed my mind.
Let me know. We can always amend it. But
That'll be like an
it,
amendment. Yeah. No, no,
definition
but
of authenticity 2.0. But like, if the way I look at authenticity is, there is the ability to be ourselves. But in order
mhm,
to be ourselves, we need to be able to be with ourselves.
yeah.
And when we are being with ourselves, it means that we are fully present.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, with what you're saying, I'm 100% on board with, right? In order to be ourselves, we have to be fully present. I think what happens is people get so trapped in the story, or stories plural, that they are convinced that that is who they are. And so the flip gets, the switch gets turned on and off depending on what the emotional response might be. For example, if I'm scared someone's not going to like me, I might flip the switch to whatever version of Jennifer I feel, they might like the best, whatever story
And
is going to resonate with them.
in Kundalini Yoga, this is exactly how authenticity is defined. They are defining it as every single one of us got this devil and the angel inside of us, and we keep
Mhm.
telling ourselves stories in order to validate one of the other. And
Mhm.
how do we get through the authentic state according to Kundalini Yoga? We learn the stories, we learn to recognize the stories which we keep repeating in ourselves, in our own heads. And then when the story, and we become so self-aware that when the story kicks in, you are able to say, that's not me, that's the story. And we are
Right.
going back to ourselves. Like,
Right.
yes, exactly.
Exactly. It's that. And like you said, I think the key here is everybody take a beat and take it easy on yourselves. Because, if you get to the point where you always know when you're dropping into story, that's enlightenment in my book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I mean, people will still drop into in this human form with
Yeah,
this brain. The chances of you, always come, having that wavering, right? Having that is, and it's just like any other sensation: hot, cold, it's salty, sweet, right? It's just another sensation we're having, but the sensation's coming through the brain. And so as we're going to have those sensations, it's just a matter of how do we handle, what's our response to those sensations in essence. Same thing, it's like developing the awareness to the story. It's just developing awareness to sensation in the brain.
exactly.
Okay, so yeah, and so when we think about it from a sensorial kind of lens, I think sometimes that helps one remind us all that we are actually animals, so we can just take our little how important we are down just a notch. Just, so I'll calm down for a second. We're sharing this marble, right? We have a lot of brothers and sisters on this thing. Let's, remember that. And
And
just being able to just take a breath and put some levity into this, because I think that on at least my experience of a lot of people who are particularly suffering at a time in their lives when they're feeling a lot of, let's say uncomfortable emotions, it's really uncomfortable. It is real.
yeah,
And to find a way to start rewiring and our ability to even notice the story, and to be able to, more importantly, at that point, is even to be able to understand that it is just a story, and to have another marker of demarcation, which is, I think, where contemplative practices can be so helpful, because it starts giving you some ideas about asking questions. Wait, maybe I'm not this. So it's not just that we're trying to say, even if you are this, it's okay, it's you. It's like, well, when you're in a world of pain, wondering if you should be alive, and you've
yeah,
lost people you've loved, and been in high trauma situations, this is not necessarily of interest. It's trying to get in the body because you're trying so hard to escape. And so finding ways sensorially to understand information as opposed to just this, I think can be so helpful. That was a little
Especially,
tangent, but
no, no, I love this tension because I deeply believe that the reason why so many people feel lonely nowadays
mm,
starts with the disconnection from ourselves, our bodies.
yeah,
We, if we would to fully feel every single sensation we've got in our bodies, we would go just crazy. You know, the heart beating, the blood pumping from our veins, we would just go crazy. So we needed to develop this kind of desensitivity to our own body, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to function as humans.
mm,
But
mm,
at the same time, when the world started to speed up, and our brain nowadays are receiving so many information in every single split of a second that we need to compound, we needed to somehow redirect the focus and energy, and we started to turn ourselves away from the sensation in our bodies, which actually are the best barometer of our emotions because we can feel it all in our bodies. But it's become easier to rule with the mind, follow the mind, and disconnect ourselves from the sensations which you just described. And
yeah,
this is, if someone would ask me what I feel is the biggest shift that would be most beneficial for the humanity over the next couple of years,
mm,
it would be this. Let's go back to our bodies. Let's learn how
yeah.
to listen to them.
Yeah, I mean, we've created, just kind of riffing off what you said, and it's not even technology and the 20th and 21st centuries, you know? Like there's been a shift for 500 years where we've moved away from requiring our bodies to help keep us alive on a very individual basis, right? I need to know how to run so I can get away from things that will eat me. And I need to know how to see and hunt and feel to be able to know how to stay warm, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, not just the industrial age, but even before this, it's like we've created this fear of sensation.
Mm.
We've tried to, as we have with so much of our planet, right, control what is uncomfortable, what is scary, what doesn't feel good. So now we're suffering terribly from not being able to manage discomfort. The idea that I'm always in an, you know, 18 to 22 degree environment in my car, in my home, in my office, you know, that even if the seasons are there, it's like, oh, look,
Yeah.
I'm cold for 10 minutes. It's a totally different relationship with our physical being. Um, so yeah, I think I'm with you. I think, and you know, of course, there's a lot of wisdom traditions that teach their spiritual wisdom. First and foremost, it's a physical practice that then takes you to an internal practice to be able to understand and feel and know the body in a different way. But yeah, I agree. I think that um, you know, it's hilarious to me to watch all these people be so interested in longevity. And we're getting there. And I listen, I'm down. I'm okay with longevity. I'm not anti-longevity.
Yeah.
But the idea is, how difficult is it to be okay with creating the best that you have available and learning about that.
Yeah.
And again, it's not about the distance.
It's about the journey.
I don't for me, it's hard for me to understand that incredible focus. I have yet to have someone explain their reasoning that for me, I can really understand. I have had a lot of people explain why, but I haven't had, for me yet, I haven't heard something that makes it make sense for me. Because to me, it's really around, gosh, okay, so again, you're monitoring everything you're doing with the best of your ability based on the information you have to date, which of course we know is changing.
Yeah.
For what and the purpose, and what is the purpose of that, you know? Um, where you're mitigating your experience to such a degree only in order to be alive longer. You're not actually having the full human experience because you're trying to have the longest experience you can.
And the caveat of it is that very often
Mhm.
you are outsourcing the sensitivity of your body to a machine. So you're
Yeah, that's
waking up, you're
interesting.
checking your stats, and I mean, I'm a Whoop user, so I experience it myself. But
Right,
you get to the point of like, oh, I had a good night's sleep because I'm 99%. Oh, I had a bad sleep because I'm 42%, which is completely, totally disconnected from my body.
right,
I'm literally
right.
chasing the numbers and the stats
Yeah, yes, that's
because,
an excellent, right, exactly. It's even furthering the disconnect. Yeah, I didn't think about it like that as I hold up my iWatch that has all my stats on it.
and look, it's great. I'm using a Whoop and it taught me how to sleep better. And yes, it's a very
Hmm.
useful tool, but it almost goes back to there is a level of self-awareness required to use those tools for the benefits of ourselves, because otherwise we're just going to be chasing
Yeah.
the stats within the community
It's
feature within the
interesting
app.
too. Like, I don't, this is not a plug on anything other than to say, I wonder, like, I sleep well. I almost always sleep well. And when I don't, it's usually whatever, you know what I mean? It's just no, it's like, okay, so a couple of nights I didn't sleep, but there's no
Yeah,
crisis here. There's nothing that we need to fix. And I wonder if that's why I don't use that feature on my watch, or there's a bunch of stuff on this thing that I don't use. But then there's a lot of stuff that I use that I'm a frequent flyer, I'm using, I'm fascinated, not because somebody told me to walk 10,000 steps, but I'm fascinated with my step count. That's my jam because
yeah,
I love to walk. And so because I don't have maps or I'm not tracking how far I'm hiking or walking, I'm not doing that. So then the watch becomes the way for me
yeah.
to see how far I've gone. And that has now turned into steps.
There
Or
you go.
or my other one, if I'm in a hilly area, which I'm not currently, so I don't have the lovely statistics offered, is how many flights of stairs.
Yeah,
I'm just like, ooh, look, that was 109.
that's impressive.
At the end of the day, it's like, how about you? How do you feel? How your knees feel? How do your hips
Yeah,
feel? Are you tired? That's
yeah,
the only thing. What is this? And I mean, again, I think, it's sort of what we see so much of now is almost like the gamification of everything. Everything becomes a get to the next level, you
yeah.
know. Fascinating. Of which we're all playing a part. I don't know. I'm slowly now, I'm probably doing less than I have ever done, but I never did a lot to begin with. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And again, I think you make a good point. I'm not. I don't think there's anything bad. It's when it becomes the only way you can do it.
Yeah, when it becomes your obsession.
Yeah, or even where it becomes you don't know how to do it another way.
Yes.
Like there's a difference between obsession and just not knowing, like, what if I wanted to, count my
Yeah,
steps?
yeah.
Or what if I wanted to know the distance? What would be another way? Do I not use those ways anymore? You
We
know?
become too dependent.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's the dependency piece where
Yeah,
we're eliminating our capabilities to do other things because we're doing this repeatedly. We're giving that away.
it's it's now I'm gonna get in a small tangent, but I I I I I think of AI as the just I love it. I love technology, you know it, but I see this risk becoming bigger and more severe as
Yeah.
I we use ChatGPT nowadays to just do everything for us, right? We don't do creative writing anymore. Like we just bump it out there, do it for me. And it I saw the research which shows that it's really destroying children's creativity. Like it's really and also this
Yeah.
argument of I don't need to learn anything because I've got all my answers on my phone. Like I don't need to know where Kilimanjaro is because I'm gonna ask ChatGPT. And it's almost like we are becoming so optimized that we are losing the sense of humanity that you and
Well,
I
and herein
trying to
lies,
restore.
I'm going to capitalize on the word optimize. Herein lies the issue. Again, it goes to define optimization. Is optimization what? I mean, when we talk about optimizing my time, okay, so if I've optimized my time by not having to do the research, by not having to, by not having to sit and write and redo and, struggle.
And
If, if,
and put
if,
my
if,
heart into it.
if optimization means that I am eliminating struggle and eliminating not knowing, then I think we're going to find out in the very not too distant future where that, and like you're saying, we're seeing some light research come out now, children and their creativity. I know that there's some neuroscientists who are saying that they're very concerned about what's going to happen in terms of overall brain size and brain degeneration
Yeah,
happening sooner because we're not creating and utilizing these synapses.
yeah.
So again, it's like this idea of, oh, I'm so optimized. Well, who told you, why are we using that word? Because really we're not being optimized. As a matter of fact, we're being compromised under
Because
the
yeah,
guise of it's like we're calling it that because that's the vernacular of the day and the understanding. But the reality is, I sit in a human body. In order to optimize my body, I need to utilize it,
and
right?
is we are optimizing for what? Because for being more productive, it seems like we are just optimizing to be more productive.
It's so funny though, and I'm pushing. I'm not pushing back on you, Alex. But again, it's like, are we really though? Are we? I know most people who are not more productive by using Chat GTP. No offense, Chat GTP or any AI.
Yeah,
There's very little. As a matter of fact, what's happening for most people is the level of productivity in their lives. I'm talking overall, right? Is
and
becoming minimalized
no,
under
that's
the
why like
guise because
yeah,
we've been told this tale that having these abilities is this is progress, right? This is blah, blah, blah. And it's like for certain things 100% agree, but it's not for everything all the time. That is, this is not, and I know the tech guys in the valley will be like, it's going to solve everything, but I think even some of them have come to the realization, be careful what you ask for, because
yeah.
we are now sourcing out not just our physical bodies like we talked about earlier. We're now sourcing out our thinking mechanism.
Yeah.
So it's not just our ability to sense danger through our sixth sense or through heat or cold or through our physical senses, but we are now like you said, we are now outsourcing the need to even use our own brain.
And also to highlight,
Wow.
it is the story that we keep repeating ourselves. Like if the optimization for productivity is just another story that we keep telling ourselves, because in the material world, your productivity defines your value. So you want to optimize to become more valuable, but to
Well,
what
but
and
here's
for
the
what and
thing.
how?
Your productivity defines your value, but only in certain places. This is not the vernacular and the way that still right now in this very moment, the majority of the world, I would say, I'm going to go there. I'm going to make a big grandiose statement, which I normally don't do because, things are different everywhere. At least the people I know a lot of people who their level of productivity is not a defining factor in their idea of their identity or success. That is still, it's part of the echo chamber loop of the algorithm of the societies that certain people are living in. It's bleeding over, right? Kind of like fast food. It's taking over other cultures. But we're also, like you said earlier when we started our conversation, but things might be shifting and we're also taking some other learnings. And I think that we're, kind of trying to recalibrate during this time when things are moving so fast. Just understanding what's going on is hard enough, let alone trying to recalibrate during all of this,
Yeah.
you know. But I think part of it is for me, and this conversation really brings it to the forefront of my mind, is accepting the premise. The best piece of advice I ever got, and I gave to this, I was giving a lecture to a bunch of women entrepreneurs in Africa, actually, in Nigeria. And I got up to speak, and I started off because it was a really smart, fabulous group of women. And I started off by saying, don't accept the premise of the question. Never accept the premise of the question, as a matter of fact, particularly as women, because we have a tendency to want to build a nest and make that community and find those connections. That's our jam. But we are accepting, and so it's accepting this idea of like, well, your productivity defines you and you're this and that. And it's like, well, I'm not gonna, no, for some people this is the case, and so it's breaking some of that down, I think, for me, when we're talking about this stuff, so that people remember this is not the only way. This is not the only belief system. It's just the worldview that has the most money and the most power and the most reach. But that is not the only worldview that is currently being, understood by all little 8.5 billion of us, which is great, except for, again, like I said, there's the power aspect and the money aspect. And so this is, who has the ability to control the narrative. Which is why, again, I think like things that you're working on are so important for us, to be able to bridge some of these gaps where we can take some of the good that has to be offered here. And again, kind of, as we're recalibrating things, finding what we can do to humanize. Yeah, probably this, these advancements.
So you also mentioned kind of the answer to the last question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway.
Yeah.
If if you were to give your younger self an advice, what would it be?
Oh, shoot. If I know I got to answer because I want to be mindful of time. If I was going to give my younger self advice, what would it be? Uh, oof. Um, the advice that I want to say I would give myself would be that it's okay to be whoever you are. And here's the thing, I've been really lucky for the most of my life to live that person. I haven't always, but in comparison and from where I'm sitting, I've been pretty lucky to do that and certainly found courage later in life to even, extrapolate on that more. So I think I would say, to be courageous.
Mm,
That would be my advice. Yeah. You
oh,
have
beautiful.
there's nothing to lose.
So let's be courageous. In the spirit of being courageous, thank you so much for this conversation. It was
Oh,
a pleasure. It was a real
Alex,
pleasure.
yeah, it's always nice. I love to talk with you. I can't wait to have another conversation. So hit me up soon. And this was lovely.